for Palestinians already hit financially by the coronavirus pandemic. A new round of restrictions has added to their woes as infections in the occupied West Bank spike again. When the Palestinian Authority decreed the new 14-day lockdown on Sunday, some businessmen took to the streets of Hebron, the city with the territory's highest infection rate, in defiance of a curfew. The next day in Ramallah, where the PA is based, about 50 marchants rallied to voice their anger and demand the reopening of their shops, some of which had been shuttered for days before the curfew went into effect. Ethiopia's water minister denied reports that the government had begun filling a massive hydroelectric dam that has caused severe tensions with Egypt and led some to fair military conflict, while Cairo swiftly asked for clarification. Media outlets reported the government had begun filling after Minister Sailesh Bekele confirmed to the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation that satellite images from recent days showed the dam's reservoir swelling. Years of talk with a variety of mediators, including the Trump administration, have failed to produce a solution. Last week's round, mediated by the African Union and observed by US and European officials, proved no different. A former car industry boss who swiftly amassed riches under Algeria's ousted President Abdelaziz Bouteflika was sentenced to 16 years in prison on corruption charges in the country's fourth major post-Bouteflika-era corruption trial. Muhyiddin Takut was convicted over privileges, advantages and access to public markets in violation of Algerian laws. Takut, who also served as a minister, held a number of industry concessions and ran an assembly plant of the giant South Korean manufacturer Hyundai. Lebanon hiked the cost of rides and shared taxis and buses by 50%, the first rise in nearly a decade, reflecting soaring prices in the country hit by a financial meltdown. Public transport drivers had called for fares to be raised after a fall of nearly 80% in the local currency since late last year that has slashed jobs and pushed many into poverty. The government announced this month a list of around 300 basic goods to be subsidized by the central bank. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United States and 5 Gulf countries imposed sanctions on 6 targets Washington has accused of supporting IS operations, including by funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars to leaders of the group in Iraq and Syria. The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center, which also includes Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman and Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, imposed sanctions on 3 money services businesses and an individual in Turkey and Syria, as well as an Afghanistan-based charity. The action freezes any U.S. assets of the individuals and entities blacklisted and generally prohibit Americans from dealing with them. Prime Minister Hassan Diab criticized some Lebanese parties of working on blocking aid to Lebanon. The Prime Minister described as shameful statements that his government heard from certain Arab states about contacts that some Lebanese politicians had held with them. Owen said it is urgent that Lebanon completes reforms as requested by the international community in order to redress the country's ailing economy and finances. The Abductees Mothers Association, a local female NGO that advocates for rights of illegal detainees, said that the Houthis rebels abducted and tortured 157 women throughout the last 2 years. In a news release, the organization said that the women were abducted by the Houthis for taking part in demonstrations demanding better living standards for their political views or while on intergovernorate travel. It explained that it documented abuses exercised by the Houthis militants against 18 women who were being held captive in Houthi detention centers. A United Nations investigation has found some gold, diamond and bauxite mines in the Venezuelan Amazon are largely controlled by criminal gangs who exploit, beat and even kill workers. The UN Human Rights Office said in a report recently released that Venezuelan security and military forces failed to prevent crimes and have participated in some violence against miners. The UN report said that 149 people were reported to have died in or around the mines from March 2016 to 2020, with security forces implicated in half of the incidents, adding that the government had not replied to its request for information. The Minister of State for Media Affairs said the Jordanian government has not set a specific reopening date for its international airports, adding the country was still studying the move. He said the government is preparing a list of low-risk countries in time for reopening the airports next month. The list will be based on criteria approved by the Ministry of Health and will include countries with a similar situation as Jordan. Activists and prominent figures in Lebanon launched a new platform to help the various factions of protesters from the ongoing uprising that began October 17th of 2019 to coordinate and communicate. The group, which calls itself the National Civil Front, issued a document outlining its initial demands to form a government of independence, hold early parliamentary elections, ensure the independence of the judiciary, implement structural and sectorial reforms, ensure Lebanese sovereignty, regional and international legitimacy, set the path for establishment of a civil state, and build a productive and sustainable national economy. Two of the world's most promising studies to develop a vaccine for COVID-19 have said subjects in their trials have shown early signs of immunity. The trials, run by teams at Oxford University in the UK and pharmaceutical company Moderna in the US, have both received significant government funding in their bids to develop their vaccines before the end of the year. The Oxford vaccine, based in Cambridge, England, has already had millions of doses mass-produced in the event of the trials proving a success. The team behind it says it is 80% confident of it being available by September. The head of a Pakistani health researcher body has urged the public to stick to rules aimed at stopping the spread of the coronavirus, especially during the upcoming Eid al-Adha holiday. Major General Professor Amir Ikram, Executive Director of Pakistan's National Institute of Health, warned of the vital need for people to continue to follow social distancing guidelines, wear face masks and adhere to other virus precautionary measures. After reporting its first COVID-19 case in late February, Pakistan has to date officially recorded 255,769 infections with 5,386 deaths. Filipinos with the coronavirus disease forced to quarantine in government centers have been urged to treat their isolation stays as being like a paid vacation. Government officials dismissed fears among sections of the population that police would be conducting house-to-house search to root out COVID-19 patients, following an announcement on isolation measures by the country's Department of the Interior and local government. Malacanang issued reassurances that strong armed tactics would not be used against infected individuals.